have this back? No, you can have it. And then this,
Yeah. I like maps.
I'll go to what's the
I think so. Yeah. Let's go get it on for it back here. With Tracy, actually. I suppose it won't take you long to run home again. I'd say go get them.
since we're on that one, I can count this as one meeting for the board,
Correct. As far as I can steal Frank's, and I do.
Yep. Cause you're gonna run out and retrieve,
There's
information.
information on speakers if you want it, and just keep track of who speaks, so I'll be back in a couple minutes.
What do you miss?
The amendments that I told you I typed up are sitting on a printer where they're doing me a lot of good. So I'll be back in a couple minutes.
I guess we're at the point now where we have no request for zoning changes. And I guess we should open up to, speakers. Shuffle them up a little bit here. I never heard her talk. I don't know. Doesn't much matter. Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Alright. Karen Wallace.
Karen Wallace, 2502 Beechwood Road, New Wilmington. I am a township resident. I request that Wilmington Township, Lawrence County Planning Commission include a requirement in the Gas and Oil Ordinance number 1 of 2016 that all compressor stations be enclosed in a soundproof building. Enclosing a compressor station is not an unusual requirement. Major oil companies already do this. And as discussed at previous meetings, acceptance of this requirement or not opposing this requirement would show that Hillcore indeed intends to be a good neighbor.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Cherry Poteet. I live at 193 Beechwood Road. I'm here to talk about the oil and gas proposed ordinance that was referred by the supervisors to you. I'd like to specifically speak about the noise levels that are permitted in the proposed ordinance. This, which is the 2016-1 ordinance, sets the noise levels at 60 decibels day and night for both wells and compressor stations, and can increase up to 70 decibels for 15 minutes every hour. I would like to question how those levels were arrived at and how those are sufficient to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the community. In the 2014 ordinance, the allowed levels were 50 decibels at night and 55 at the daytime. Now, it's important to know that decibels are not additive. 60 decibels is not just 10% higher than 50, it's twice as much as 50. So you've doubled the allowed amount of noise. And this is, when it's a compressor station, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, night and day, for 20 years or more. Now, 60 decibels is a normal conversation 3 feet away, which is fine, except if you're trying to have another conversation, and you've got a conversation that you're not listening to, 3 feet away from you, when you're sitting on your front porch, when you're sleeping in your house at night, can you open your windows? Well, you can if you want to listen to a conversation 3 feet away from you, constantly, all night, every night. It just, if you go outside at night now, in the township, it is quiet. This is not a city. There is not a constant hum of noise from the nearby freeway. There is silence. This proposed ordinance completely changes that. So I would like to request that on page 6, in 800.21.5A1, that you change it back to 50 decibels. And at page 11, you also change it back to 50 decibels. It still allows for an increase during the day of 10 decibels. And to, on 800.21A5B4, I would request that you remove the last sentence, which allows an exception to compressor stations being enclosed in sound deadening buildings. As Ms. Wallace said, compressor stations in buildings is the industry standard. And if you remove that sentence, the applicant can still go to the zoning hearing board and ask for variance. No matter what you put in the ordinance, the applicant can always request a variance. But they have to prove a need for it. The standard in the ordinance should be what protects the residents of the community. And in order to do that, you need to require that they be in a building. And you need to lower the noise requirements. Because it simply is going to be a dramatic change to the community for the benefit of a very small number of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Are there any questions? No. Blaine Lucas.
Good evening, nice to see you all again. The solicitor had forwarded us a draft of the current ordinance. I understand Ms. Hahn's attorney also received one with the invitation to provide comments on it. And we did transmit a red line version yesterday. You folks all received a copy of that. I'm not going to dwell on everything, but I did want to hit a couple of the more pertinent points. If you go to starting on page 3, a lot of the changes that are now being suggested, my clients are generally okay on, with some language tweaking, with 1 or 2 exceptions, and I'll hit on those. This reduced emissions completion, that's really an operational issue that in many respects is beyond the municipalities. That's the how as opposed to the where distinction, but we're generally okay on that as long as there's language placed in there that makes it clear that in some instances flaring and venting is permitted under the federal regulations. And I think Dr. Nykart's not here right now, but I think we were kind of in agreement on that. So our language was just to suggest to put the language right into the definition. There's a definition of closed fluid containment system and closed loop fluid containment system. Again, these are operational issues that we think are really pushing the limit on what the township is jurisdiction, but again, our clients are generally okay on those. Our only point is that there are 2 different definitions, closed fluid containment system and closed loop fluid containment system. The latter seems to be more broadly encompassing of what you're after, and we're not quite sure what the difference is and why both of those definitions are in there, so we suggested striking the one. Page 4, the residential or commercial district boundary addition. That will have some impact and reduce the areas that are available for unconventional drilling, but I want to save my primary comments to one of the changes that's being suggested in the setbacks for compressor stations. We did, because the current draft added the word existing building as opposed to building, we thought it would be wise to have a definition of existing building, is, that you measure from. So we added that just down below the use chart there. And we also had the waiver that a property owner could, get from an adjacent property owner mirror the new additions that you've had setbacks. Now that you've added residential commercial district boundary, we added that as something that someone who lived along that boundary could theoretically anyway consent to a waiver. So we're just trying to make it consistent with the setbacks. Moving on to page 6, on the noise, this was under the current is under the current ordinance, measured 60 decibels from the nearby building. The draft pulls it into the property line. We understand this was one of the items that Attorney Hartman was interested in. When we talked to him about that, his concern was not during, he was okay, at least I'm not gonna put words in his mouth, but my understanding was he was okay on having it be measured at the building during actual drilling activity, but his concern was when there was permanent development, he wanted it to be measured at the property line so people on adjacent properties would be able to develop their property for residential purposes, for example. So, again, I don't know whether that's what the planning commissioner, Mr. Hartman, really wanted, but we suggested a tweak to the language that has the measuring point at the property line for permanent facilities, but at the nearest building during the actual drilling activity. Under the theory, by the time somebody would develop additional properties, the drilling would actually be done. On page, a couple minor typos throughout the document. Then on page 8, containment of fracking waste. The only change we really made there was to delete that definition of the closed fluid containment system because it seemed to be duplicative of the definition of closed loop fluid containment system. We also clarified it didn't apply to runoff. The reduced emissions completion systems, again, since you added the reference to the federal CFRs in the definition, we cleaned that up. And then on the screening, that was a concern because you can't screen with vegetation an active drill site. It's just not possible. It doesn't make sense. We assume the intent there was in large part to address noise concerns. And if that's the case, an operator is going to have to meet those standards. And our suggestion is that if you're going to set what's called a performance standard, it says here's the decibel level, you should leave it to the operator to figure out, based on a particular property involved, how distances, terrain, and the like, what mitigation measures they might need to take. I mean, if the drill site's a half a mile away from the nearest existing structure, that's a different situation than if it's 600 or 700 feet, for example. Moving on then to page 9, a lot of these comments are a mere for compressor stations, what I just said for drill sites. The one thing I do want to bring to your attention, though, is our concern is primarily with increasing from 200 to 500 feet the compressor station, central station, property line distance. And here's why. If you just sketch out, let's say a building is going to be 100 by 100. That's probably shorter than it's going to be in fatter, but you're already talking, if you have a 500-foot setback, you're going to have a tract that's 1,100 feet by 1,100 feet at the bare minimum. Even assuming you could locate this exactly in the middle of the property, might be a wetland in the middle of the property for all that matter. When you just do the math on that, you're talking 30 to 35 acres. I mean, you have a requirement of a 10-acre minimum, but that 500-foot requirement effectively triples, if not quadruples that. And it doesn't take into account the terrain. It might not be feasible because of terrain, hills, wetlands, slope, whatever, to put it in the middle. So that's the main one that we have a concern about from a setback perspective. The others, my client would prefer they stay at the lower numbers, but that's the one that's the biggest concern for us. And then our other comments just really mirror the same comments I just gave you on the drill site. So, thank you.
Thank you. One question.
Yeah.
What is a typical noise level at a property line? Any idea?
60 is very common. I mean, you'll see 55, 60, 65, but, 60 is pretty much right in the middle, from what we've seen. We track a lot of
That's what-
ordinances.
That's pretty much what it's been measured at, and it.
Oh, well, I think the measurements, everyone strives to be lower than that, but, I mean, that's the ordinance standard we see a lot in a lot of ordinances, particularly down in Washington County, Greene County, and the like.
55 to 65 is where you.
Yeah, everything, 55, 60, 65, everything seems to be pretty much in that range. And 60 isn't something that an operator can automatically meet. They may have to put sound walls up, for example, while they're drilling and the like. So, but it's low enough, but to be attainable, but not so low to be impossible to meet.
What about the ones at the Seagull well
Excuse me.
station?
Excuse me.
Oh, I apologize, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So,
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Who's next there? Anybody else have any questions for Blaine?
Well, you guys didn't map it, did you? Your one question was about.
No, again, I think of the two changes made for wells and the two changes made for compressor stations,
I don't have any questions for him.
or the four total changes, they all chip away a little bit of what we previously mapped. The only one, again, that we have a significant concern about is that 500 foot from the property line, just because you have to measure it from, a square lot, from four sides. And I do recall, I didn't have the map here with me tonight, when we mapped that before, the current ordinance with the lower setbacks, about 6% of the township was available. So it may not drop it to zero, but it's gonna significantly impact that. I'm not
Say
suggesting
that
that's.
again?
What's that?
Say that again?
When we mapped, or when Chevron mapped, the amount of land available in the township under the ordinance that exists at this moment, for compressor stations, that it was approximately between 6 and 7% of
You
the.
sure that wasn't the 2014 ordinance?
No, the 2014 ordinance, there was nothing left.
Yeah, there was. That wasn't much, but there
Well,
were places.
one spot, there was one
But
spot.
Are you talking
For
from
compressor
compressor?
stations.
stations? Really?
No, I'm talking about compressor stations,
I understand.
that's the concern.
Okay.
I have a question for you, just an ignorant question. Can I ask him a question?
When you
I'll answer
speak, you
questions
may-
from the planning commission.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the question, so. You're in here to speak, right?
Well, sort of.
Okay. All right, Rhonda,
That's me.
okay.
Before I speak, because I really didn't prepare remarks, I'm just sitting here trying to jot some thoughts down, but I want to play something. Is that okay? Can I play an audio, video thing for a couple minutes? Or maybe 30
I
seconds?
suppose you can use a couple of your minutes for that.
Okay. Because I pretty much said.
How much time do we have?
5 minutes apiece.
How, he
There's
just
a
talked for
total-
over
He had 8
7.
minutes.
There's a total of 30 minutes.
I timed him.
We did.
Who had 8 minutes?
Mr. Lucas just talked for 8 minutes, we timed it.
And I was paying more attention listening to him than I was
You're paying
watching
more
my phone.
attention to him and the residents of the township.
Who are the sheep? Now you can see from the video that this compressor station is like at least a football field away. I mean, it's not close by. This is a nice little farmhouse that we bought. We have some peace and quiet out in the country. You'll have to look it up. I've got a couple of different videos. No, it's not.
I don't know, I'm just curious if it's.
No, this is just an example of what the sounds of a compressor station are. So when we're sitting here in this nice quiet room talking about it, it doesn't really seem that bad. But we're talking about people's lives, and we're talking about, people who have bought a home, presumably to enjoy out in the country, and then they end up living in an industrial zone against their will, most of them. And my problem with this planning commission and this whole process has been that, first of all, we were told that we had an ordinance that was too restrictive, but nobody ever told us, well, why is it too restrictive? Who said it's too restrictive? Because the Lawrence County Planning Commission says we have the right to set our zoning as we please. However, you know, the needs of our specific community deem our zoning requirements, that's what they are. So I come to these meetings and I listen, last planning commission, I listened to Mr. Kingery on Skype, tossing out ideas, you know, tossing out numbers. There wasn't any research, there wasn't any evidence that these numbers were going to do anything to benefit our community. Just tossing them out there. There was even a reference to, you know, I'll trade you this for that. Making a joke of it. And what really ticks me off, it's not a joke. Somebody's going to be living next to that compressor station. It's not going to be Mr. Kingery because he's got a nice cushy place in New Zealand that he can escape to. The rest of us don't. We don't have a place to go. We're here. This is our community. This is our home. And the people that you guys seem to be listening to are is it 30% of people who have leases in the township? 70% of landowners, from the numbers that I have, 70% do not have leases. So either people with land get more votes in this township, or something's going on that I just don't quite understand. And I really would like some answers before anything else happens, before there's another hearing. I think we deserve some answers to where these numbers are coming from and why zoning, as we've just seen, we can't tell the gas and oil industry how they can do their business, but we can tell them where. That's the only protection that we have, and we are not using it. We're just giving it all away. That's it.
What numbers are you asking about?
What do you mean?
Well, you said you want to know where numbers are coming
I
from.
want-
I don't know what numbers.
I want to know, tell me how, show me the proof that our ordinance is too restrictive. The only thing I heard was that Mr. Solomon went to some meeting, a conference, and heard about, you know, some legal action that had been taken, and suddenly changed his mind about an ordinance that we passed a month and a half prior to that happening. So I don't understand what exactly we are referring to if you know, we passed an ordinance November 2014, a month and a half later we turn around and we got to do a whole new one. Even though the planning commission is telling us that we're fine.
Thank you.
Could I share something with the crowd here? This is a recording similar to what she had. It's a compressor station with no building. It's on the west side of Mercer, PA. And anybody can go up there. I can give you specific directions to where it's at. And that's the sound I got.
And what's your distance?
Why don't you take us there?
About 750 feet.
750
Yeah.
feet, and what does our ordinance call for?
750 feet.
And it's still,
that would
it says 500.
Okay, whatever.
There you go again, whatever.
Calm down.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, so for the benefit, that's the sound, if you take a measurement, that's way less than 60 decibels in an open air situation. And if you go closer,
even want to hear that one?
excuse me, if you go closer to within the 500 feet, because I'm standing right beside it, so this next one is definitely right beside it. Okay, listen to that one.
Well, the different sizes of compressors and make different sizes of noise.
You hear that? You hear the birds.
So there's one compressor in the whole world.
So you're saying a compressor
Okay.
doesn't make
Guys,
any
I'm just
noise?
sharing my information with
But
you,
from
okay?
what you measured, you're saying that the compressor doesn't make any
Could
noise.
we only speak when it's our turn, please?
Okay, that's all I got.
Okay. Thank you. Big Rick.
I'd like to reiterate respectfully a couple major points that we've been over and over and over again. One's constitutional and one's zoning. It seems to be a constitutional violation to allow an industry to come in and threaten air, water, and environment. Noise is an issue, emissions is an issue, water is an issue. We are protected by the Constitution not to lose those things. And I don't care how many wells are drilled, and, pay no attention to the Constitution, it's wrong. If 100 wells are drilled, if 1,000 are drilled, it's wrong. It's against the Constitution. To come in to close to people's residences, it's wrong. Unconstitutional. Secondly, about zoning, it's an incompatible use to have industry in agricultural zones. You want to put little steel mills, many electric steel mills in farming areas, limestone reduction mills, fly ash mills. If you do one, you can do all those other things. And again, I don't care how many wells have violated this, doesn't make it right. It's a violation of zoning. And if you continue in Wilmington Township to do this, you're violating the Constitution, you're violating and making meaningless agricultural zones. Agriculture zones is for agriculture. Thank you.
Norrell Adams.
I was under the understanding that Mr. Prada was gonna be here this evening, because at the last meeting, I asked if he could be here this evening. I thought we got the answer, yes. Apparently I was wrong. I thought that he was more willing to work with our community than our last solicitor, and I was willing to say that I appreciated that. He also said that we could have an open session where everybody is present, including the supervisors, zoning boards, himself, and our community, and where everybody could speak. And I thought that that was a really good idea. Speak of the devil. But anyways, I
It's a good thing you showed up.
if we're gonna, if that's actually gonna happen. Was that a lie, or is that actually gonna happen? I'd like to say, the secrets that are here, unanswered questions, as well as the numbers being pulled out of thin air that are proposed for a rolling, that is going to change so many of our lives, is absurd. I don't understand why numbers are pulled out of the air like something pulled out of a hat. Each one of you should go out there together as a group, both the supervisors and this board here, and measure out on an open piece of property the numbers that you are proposing, so that it makes more sense, that you see it in front of you, so that you understand the numbers that you're proposing, and make the changes that are necessary to make our lives a little bit better. All of you should have went to these sites that you were invited to hear the sounds, the smells of the fumes, see the traffic, and learn for yourselves by seeing with your own eyes the information that has been presented and seemingly ignored or possibly overlooked. I recently went to a site on Wozniak Road off of Orchard Road, which I have spoke of before, and the flare was so huge I couldn't believe how big it was. I have pictures and some things to present, which this is compared to other ones that I've seen, which to me meant how many more toxins are being expelled into the air and water around there, as well as others. I also seen a compressor station last week in my travels heading down towards Cranberry and Seven Fields area. They were putting a building around it, so it must obviously be safe to put a building around, because previously that was a question to our board. If other people are doing it, why can't we? In researching, I found that the DEP and EPA do not follow through with what they are supposed to do. What you are counting on them to do, or passing the buck off on them to do, they rubber stamp things and they pass it on. So that's a joke, don't count on them. I've also found out this week that supposedly my neighbors, which I've known all my life, have agreed to a compressor station right across from my house. I feel hurt and betrayed, and if this is so glorious, why didn't she tell her own brother that she was agreeing to this? I went over and I spoke with him, and I assumed that he knew about this, but he did not, and he was pretty upset about this too, because it's gonna be in his backyard. It's gonna propose a problem with his well his heir, and this is all, you know, in regards to the health of his child. We pride ourselves in a safe neighborhood and country air and everything we built all of our lives, and it's being ripped away. To me, our rights aren't safe anymore. And also, I'd like to say, if there is information, or I have some information here of a lawsuit that says that, they're not even paying their workers. And I have the information and proof on that they don't even pay their workers. So if they're not paying their workers, how honest are they gonna be to you? They're gonna tell you they're gonna do all this stuff ahead of time, but they're not gonna follow through once they already have everything signed in writing. You're not even gonna exist. And the other thing I'd like to say is, I was forced a few years back to take down a fence. Yes, a fence, okay? Because I didn't like my kids living so close to the road. And the fence was in front of my house, okay? Yet you people will allow all of this to happen. And I don't even wanna live here anymore. I don't wanna be here. I don't wanna be exposed to this. I just wanna walk away from my roots and go somewhere where it's safe. I've spent 41 years here in Fayette as a lifelong resident, and I thought that I would always be safe here and it would be home, and I guess I was wrong. And I would like you guys to please do more research before you sign. And here are some of the things that I have to show you. This is Wozniak Road. It's right off of Orchard Road. It's the Wingert Well site, and this is terrible pictures because my ink was running out. This is how big that flare was. And yes, I have courage, and I drove right up to it. But that's just me. Here's a horse and buggy, an Amish buggy sign, because there's Amish houses right beside this. And notice, they put a sign that says, notice, speed limit, 10 miles per hour, no excuses, please respect our neighbors. This is the road for the well right beside it. Also, this is the road for the pad. Notice, the Amish buggy sign's knocked over. They don't even respect that.
You know that the oil people ran
No,
over the sign?
but it's just the idea. Theirs are all up nice, prim and proper. And the Amish buggy's like, you know, it just shows. And this, I kinda just drew a map that shows where the compressor station's supposedly gonna be, you know, compared to like the Amish schools and like what is that?
You're already past for 6 minutes now.
Well, I'm a resident and I get 5 minutes, but others get 8, so. Well, here's some papers, not that they'll ever be looked at, but this is proof of the lawsuit. And here's 2 things that we would like for you guys to attend.
Okay. Donna Painter.
I had some thoughts before I came to the meeting tonight, and I went over to my computer and I quickly jotted them down. I wish to publicly thank those individuals who have diligently worked to protect the health, safety, and quality of life of the residents of this area. Volumes of scientific materials have been researched by community residents, and pertinent articles from other areas that have issues with fracking and changing law have been presented at every meeting I have attended. However, it's been my experience when attending these meetings that much of this information was not addressed or acknowledged that it was pertinent to the issues under discussion. I'm dismayed that the right of a minority and a corporation to make money at the expense of everything held dear by the majority of residents is a prevailing goal of some of these representatives. Clean air to breathe, safe water to drink, freedom from noise pollution, and safe roads on which to drive are a basic right for all. Residential and agricultural zoning is in place to protect these rights, and land use should not be changed to accommodate the desecration of our community. Making money for a minority and profit for an oil corporation should not be the criteria for making decisions regarding the welfare of our community for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody feel like reading that? things to read. Get the speakers that are here first. Bill Hahn.
Hi, Bill Hahn, 994 Indian Run Road, Wilmington Township. I've sat through both Planning Commission and Township Supervisors meetings for the past several years and listened to you go back and forth on setback distances from property lines and from private water wells and from public water wells, who should pay for air quality testing, and many other topics regarding the oil and gas industry. While these are all very important, I haven't heard anyone other than myself and other township residents talk about why non-conventional gas drilling is compatible with agricultural land use. Is it good for livestock, or is it good for crop production? Is it good for the soil or for the water? The answer to all of these questions is no, it's not good for agricultural use, and it's not compatible with agricultural use. I've said this before, but I think it's worth repeating. If you took the land under a non-conventional gas drilling well pad and flipped it over, turned it upside down, you would easily see that it's a huge industrial operation, bigger than the cheese factory, a paint factory, a steel mill, and all of those are required in industrial zones. Why is this different just because you can't see it on the surface? I don't understand the difference. I've contended all along that non-conventional oil and gas production is a highly industrialized process. Lawrence County is now assessing well pads and compressor stations under the industrial tax rate. So they've agreed that it's an industrial process as well, or they wouldn't be able to tax it that way. Additionally, Terry Brossert, who is Range Resources VP of Regulatory and Legislative Affairs, recently said that one of Range Resources' best practices is to locate its shale gas well pads away from large homes where wealthy people live who might have the money to fight such drilling and fracking operations. This was stated during a presentation that he made to the PBI Environmental Law Forum in a session titled Environmental Issues Facing the Oil and Gas Industry on April 7th. I'm sure Mr. Lucas was probably there. Many in the audience said that these comments serve as an actual notice of the need to implement policies and practices that protect these communities from adverse effects of industrial land use. Why have the Township Planning Commission and supervisors determined that non-conventional gas drilling is not an industrial process? What due diligence have you done in resigning yourselves that this is compatible with agricultural land use? I've asked that many times and still have not received an answer. As information, I hate that I'm the guy that sued the township that I live in. I hate it. I've gained nothing. I have nothing to gain financially. It's money I could have used to send my kids to college, to improve my property and my home and property. My goal is to protect my family's health, safety, and well-being and peace of mind. I want my property to be the way it was when I purchased it. I can tell you that if a well pad goes in or a compressor station goes in as close to my house as possible, which was stated by one of the planning commissioners, that none of these things will be protected. And isn't it not your job to protect the citizens of the township? The oil and gas industry has proven over and over that this process cannot be done safely without affecting air and water quality. Several families in Dimock, PA were awarded millions of dollars for water contamination. There are ongoing issues with noise pollution at the Siegel Well compressor station in Mahoning Township, which I'm sure our solicitor is very aware of. So why would it not be a requirement to enclose compressor stations? It's industry standard. There are very few compressor stations anywhere that are not enclosed. Because the industry says, we'll fix it if there's a problem. Well, how's that work for Mahoning Township? They put a curtain around it and it hasn't been fixed. I've been there and it doesn't sound at all like what Fred had taped. It sounds even louder than what Rhonda had taped. I was there. You were all invited. So I guess, are you really trying to protect the citizens of the township, or just doing what the industry recommends and the large landowners that don't even show up to speak want you to do? Think for yourselves, please. You're very smart people. Read, do the work on your own. Don't ask Mr. Lucas what he thinks. Do the research on your own. Ask me what I think. Ask these people what they think. We live here. He doesn't. He comes up because he's protecting the rights of his company. If there were no potential for damage, then there wouldn't even be a reason for them to worry about some of the things in the ordinance or some of the things we're talking about. The last thing I would ask is do something similar to what Penn Township recently did. They require the applicant to prove that their activities will not cause harm to the residents. That I highly doubt that the industry can prove that. Thank you.
Janice,
Gabriel. Hi there. I'm Janice Gabriel. I reside at 394 Kingswood Road, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. I'm a 2010 graduate of Westminster College. I'm here out of concern for the kids that I went to school, attended school with me, who came from all over the country for the bucolic beauty of the neighborhood. I'm here for the organic farmers. I'm here for Destinaire Farms people and what New Wilmington used to be with all of its shops and its lovely little restaurants and everything. You seem to have wanted that 25 years ago. People came from out of town, from all over, to go to the land, to New Wilmington and all these areas. I can't talk to you anymore about what the dangers are because over 100 people did their research. If I can help you say where they got it from, we went to meetings by Dr. Anthony Agraffia, geophysicist, Cornell University. We talked to the Robinson Township supervisor, who successfully defeated the oil and gas in their neighborhoods. South Fayette Township just set standards. They said you enclose those compressors, you set them back, you don't drill from 7 at night till 7 in the morning. If you're gonna do it, Act 13 says that you have to work with them, sort of. It does not say where, and it does not say how. And who told us that? That would be Robinson Township supervisors. They were adamant about this. And they said it because of what all these people have already stated. It's Section 1, Article 27. We are entitled to pure water and clean air. And it is the supervisors and the township that has to be in charge of it for the betterment of everybody. So, as science catches up with fracking, as Governor Wolf's standards come in, we don't have to be against it forever. You know, when they can have zero emissions coming off, when they put compressors, buildings around them like they did in Fayette Township, when you can tell us that those trucks that are barreling down 224, 1 a minute going towards Boardman are secured and whatever's in those trucks is secured, yes, drill baby drill. We don't want our neighbors to not have royalties. What we want is the health and well-being and the viability of this area for generations to come. And I'm here because what you decide to do here is not just here. It's Volant, it's Neshannock, it's this whole area. It's what we, people like Carrie Hahn and me from Chicago, agreed to come here for. We want to be a bedroom community to Pittsburgh. We want drilling if it can be done safely. Governor Wolf says, we're gonna drill, we're not shutting it down, but we are gonna have strict standards. And I can tell you that if you just look it up, it's all a matter of record. It's a matter of University of Pennsylvania. It's a matter of Columbia University. It's a matter of the Colorado School of Public Health before it was shut down. We are not Texas, they're backward. We are not Oklahoma, they still have their earthquakes even though their seismologists were fired. We are an intelligent, farming, progressive area. That's what all these people told you. And we love each other as human beings, as citizens. We want our people to make their money. but they have to do it right. And that's what Governor Wolf has said. So I suggest, please, prudence. And prudence would be, look at what South Fayette did. They said, set those things back. Put compressor buildings around them. If Hillport can give everybody in the whole company $100,000, they can put buildings around these compressors. If you protect all of us, you're gonna be doing what Governor Wolf asked us to do. I heard him, I watched him, and that's what he said. He said, I don't wanna kill fracking in Pennsylvania. I want it to be done safely. I wanna be progressive. We wanna be like California. And I think that's what everybody here is saying. So please, you are intelligent people. I know at least one of you. You know, please. I just ask you to protect us. I had to rebuild hard. My neighbor is suffering from leukemia. Please protect all of us. Because you know who's saying that the air isn't safe near here? The professionals. That's who's saying it. The doctors, these aren't wingnuts. These are researchers and MDs from prestigious universities like University of Pittsburgh, Dr. Marcia Haley. She just said it. I invite you to look it up. Set those things back. Protect us. That's all we're asking. Thank you.
Thank you. Warren Hickman.
Thank you, excuse me. Warren Hickman, 224 Beechwood Road, New Wilmington. Copy for each of you. You're welcome. Just one now. I would like to begin by emphasizing what Rhonda mentioned here and some others have mentioned. And that is, this has been going on a long time. This is the fifth whereas in ordinance number 1 that we're looking at. Ordinance number 5 of 2014 is more restrictive than permitted by law as currently in force, and also limits the land available for oil and gas extraction more than intended. We have been asking questions for 8 months, more than 8 months. I'll get to some of that other. But